Hi, I'm Kaden here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 15 recap. Before we get to the group of games we're going to talk about this week, just a couple little tidbits of news. First of all, in very sad news, Ravens running back Keaton Mitchell, who has been having a breakout rookie season, has now come to an end with a torn ACL. He will miss the rest of the year. And of course, the Ravens playoff run. Huge bummer there. He was becoming a giant part of that offense, to say the least.
Quite explosive.
Outside of the red zone, he was their entire run game pretty much, aside from Lamar Jackson, I guess. But it's just a huge hit there, and we'll see how the Ravens are able to do without him. And then in some happier news for Mason Rudolph, happier news at least, Mason Rudolph will be starting Saturday against the Bengals for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we'll see if the third starting quarterback for the Steelers this year can be the right one. They say third time's a charm. We'll see if it's true here for the Steelers. Now moving on to the games, starting with none other than the Minnesota Vikings. And they lose in typical Minnesota Vikings fashion, which is absolutely heartbreaking and soul-crushing. The Vikings go to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals and lose by a score of Minnesota with 24, Cincinnati with 27. 3-point difference there, which was an overtime field goal by cold-blooded Evan McPherson. But at the end of the day, the Bengals played a good game. Whatever, they played well. Jake Browning, woohoo, good for him. You love to see the underdog story. But at the end of the day, the Vikings beat themselves. There's no other way to say it. They had every opportunity. They had two different inches opportunities, a third and inches and a fourth and inches that would have probably led to them getting in field goal range and winning the game before it went into overtime. In overtime, the Bengals got the ball first and the Vikings actually got a stop.
Yeah.
But then we're not able to do anything with the ball, which led to the Bengals getting the ball back, driving down the field, and winning the game with just a couple of minutes left with that overtime field goal. Multiple just stupid interceptions by Nick Mullins. Overall, I really do think Nick Mullins played well. I thought he played smart, except for those two very dumb turnovers. I thought he made good throws. The offense was rolling with him at the helm.
Yeah.
But he had two different red zone interceptions, which both of them were just like, what are you doing? One was an absolute duck across the middle that was easily picked off by the safety. And one was quite possibly one of the stupidest interceptions I've ever seen. As he is getting sacked, the defensive tackle who's sacking him drops to the ground. He's sitting on the ground. And as Nick Mullins is falling, he chucks the ball pretty much horizontal with the ground. And it bounces off the face mask of the defensive tackle who sacked him and into his hands. And this was at like the 15-yard line, 15, 20-yard line. So almost guaranteed field goal from that range. Maybe not for the Vikings, but pretty likely field goal at that range. And when a 3-point game, when you have two different red zone interceptions, that's pretty big right there. That's 6 points in a 3-point game. That's the difference between a win and a loss.
That's the difference.
Of course, lots of other plays rather you can point out, but those ended up to really bite us in the ass. Had a 17-3 lead and choked it away, lost in overtime. No one you can blame but yourself there.
Yeah, you allowed 21 points in the fourth quarter, which is huge. That's a lot of points in one quarter. And that's really was the difference there, is that the defensive breakdown and really the bad play by the corners is what I saw when with two deep shots to T. Higgins that were caught by T. Higgins that really shouldn't have been, just because they were misplayed by the Vikings defensive backs. So that was a couple of big turning points there. And if not for the bad play or the bad turnovers of Nick Mullins, I do think that you guys win this game. But again, the turnovers got to you, and this time it wasn't the fumbles, it was the interceptions.
Yep, I mean, we lose again after going negative on the turnover differential.
Yep.
Pretty common thread you see there across the league, not just for the Vikings. And yes, we certainly got toasted in the passing game. Speaking of getting toasted in the passing game, next up we have the Green Bay Packers, who hosted none other than Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers pick up a win in Lambeau by a score of 34-20.
Yep. It was a very bad game for the Packers defense. And after talking up the Packers defense, their pass defense last week, this week they were shredded by Baker Mayfield Jr. III, who had one of the most outstanding games of his career. So really hats off to him. He went out there and he took control of that game and he won it by himself, just like I said he could. And I put it out there in the universe and it ended up happening. He's the first opponent to put up a perfect passer rating in Lambeau Field history. So think of that as a record for Baker Mayfield to have. And he also had a career record of 0-3 with 2 touchdowns and 7 interceptions prior to this matchup. So he came in and threw four touchdowns with 0 interceptions and got his win total up to 1 at Lambeau. So knowing that, I'm not surprised that he came in and dominated. Baker doesn't like to go winless in places, but it really was a bad showing by the Packers defense and likely to cause this game, I believe, will be the cause of the firing of Joe Barry. Maybe not now, but I don't believe he'll be retained this offseason.
This is kind of one they're going to look back on and almost the straw on the camel's back. It's just too late to do anything.
Well, we had the run defense, holes, and that was already bad enough, but we had our secondary to kind of lean on, and they just totally blew up with miscommunications and blown assignments all around.
Yeah, Baker tries to even out that touchdown interception ratio by dropping 4 touchdowns at Lambeau's to go along with his 381 yards.
Almost 400.
Almost got the double 4 there, only about 20 yards off. Really, another very impressive part of this, someone who didn't have a touchdown, but Chris Godwin had double-digit receptions and I believe 155 receiving yards.
They constantly went to him on third down.
It's exactly what I was about to say, and third down was his money-making down. Countless conversions there by Chris Godwin. Just a really good game by the Bucs overall. I watched it first game of the year, of course, when the Vikings lost to the Buccaneers in Minneapolis. When the Buccaneers turn it on, they can turn it on. They have the talent still, even without Tom Brady. They're just very inconsistent. And on today's game, or on Sunday's game at least, sadly for the Packers, it was one of their more consistent days because they were consistently dominating.
It was a veteran team going up against a young rookie, full of rookies team, and the veteran team really showed why the veterans make up a majority of the NFL.
Yep, experience definitely matters. Next up, we have my game of the week, which happened just last night, so as we are recording this on Tuesday the 19th. But we have the Philadelphia Eagles heading to the 12th man Seattle to take on the Seahawks, and the Seahawks pick up quite a bit of an upset win by a score of 20-17. Now, you could really tell that the 12th man was truly playing a part for the Seahawks in this game. I didn't even get to watch all of this game, and I personally saw 3 false start penalties, 2 of them on Jason Kelce, which was pretty crazy, very rare to see.
Infractions.
2 different snap infractions, at least one other one by Landon Dickerson, and maybe more that I didn't get to see. But the Eagles just looked bad this game. That secondary looked like it could not stop anything, which they're going against a very good receiving core with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. But they're going against Drew Lock at quarterback, which Drew Lock can definitely play well if he wants to, but it's very rare you see him come out and play very well, especially like he did this week. You can blame them not having Darius Slay for that, which definitely was a hit on them, but they had the rookie Keely Ringo, who I think is a very good player and played very well in that game, backing him up. So you can't really put everything on just that one Slay injury. And if you really can put everything on that injury, then that's even worse than not getting shredded, because if you're really that reliant on one player and you lose that player and this is how it looks for you, that's not good for the long run either. But I think that the Eagles played bad more than the Seahawks played good in this game, but that's not to say that the Seahawks rather didn't have a pretty good game nonetheless.
Yeah, and I thought that, I thought the Eagles would walk away with this one, but they didn't. I was very surprised that the Seahawks were able to upset the Eagles in this one. I had the Eagles picked last week as a big win here, but I did not expect the the big plays from Jackson Smith-Njigba, who made a crucial touchdown catch just at the end of the game to give the Seahawks the lead. And then that was really given up by that Eagles defense, which, like you said, had been getting beat all night. And it got beat on that play for sure. One thing that was interesting is that Matt Patricia took over the defensive play calling for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it did not seem to make that much of a difference. They continued to give up the points, even though it wasn't as many points as they had given up. They were giving up 30 in the last 3 weeks. But they didn't give up that many this week, so it was a little bit better, but that offense did not come to back up their defense.
Yep. My favorite part of this game, of course, is we got to see Drew Lock's stupid-ass celebration that he used at Missouri all the time. It was like a sideways hook 'em horns. He started against the Texas Longhorns. Look it up. It's so dumb that it's funny. I love it. I don't know why, but I love it. I wish I did. But now we'll finish up here with Callan's game of the week, which was 2 orange teams battling it out. We have the Chicago Bears heading to Cleveland to take on the Browns, and the Browns pick up a home win by just a slight margin at a score of 20-17.
Yeah, and the Browns have to come back in this one, led by Joe Flacco, who through the first 3 quarters threw 3 interceptions, but was able to throw 2 touchdowns late against the Bears, and which was enough. Well, 1 touchdown late and 1 touchdown early, but he was able to lead them back and score 13 unanswered points in the 4th quarter against the Bears, which led the Browns to a 3-point victory, 20-17. And it was really another good game by Joe Flacco, who showed that he had that clutch gene still by coming up in the 4th quarter. Even though he had been beaten down and thrown a couple of interceptions, he showed that didn't matter, and he's still the gunslinger that he was back in Baltimore by leading the Browns on this comeback in the 4th quarter. And he had over 350 yards again, which is another amazing number for someone who started this season at home. So you didn't expect that Joe Flacco would be the one leading the Browns into the playoffs, but here we are, Joe Flacco leading the Browns into the playoffs.
I hate it. I don't know why, but I can't stand it. I give total props to Joe Flacco. Nothing against him, but it's so unrealistic that it gets under my skin. I don't know why, but Callan's right. I mean, he seems to have some sort of clutch gene. The Browns show up. They're 7-1 at home this season, only 2-4 on the road, but 7-1 at home. So all of a sudden, winning this division actually becomes huge because they've shown that they can't perform on the road as well at home. So if they make the playoffs, they want to get those home games, as every other team does, but it may be very important for them. But yeah, this game, of course, came down to a very close Hail Mary at the end. I kind of thought Darnell Mooney was going to get it on the ground. It was tipped down, and Darnell Mooney was already low, and it just kind of bounced off of him. He was falling. He couldn't really...
He actually had it in his lap.
Yeah.
But the momentum in his legs kicked it out
ricocheted
over
it back
him.
up. Yeah. It was a crazy game, to say the least. I didn't get to see much of the first half, but I got to see all of the second half. Bears had a 10-point lead, and the Browns were able to erase that, which of course led to their 3-point victory. But nonetheless, really good stuff by the Browns, and not too bad of stuff by the Bears either.
No.
The Browns are a little bit of an unrated team, and they were able to put up 17 points against that very good Browns defense. Justin Fields played very well. The more I watch the Bears, I don't know how you can say that Justin Fields is the problem. I don't think he's an all-star elite quarterback by any means, but I think he is getting way more hate than he deserves.
Yeah, Justin Fields definitely has shown, at least in this game, that he can play well, and when he plays well, the Bears are very competitive.
Definitely. So that was our NFL Week 15 recap. Thank you all so much for watching this episode, and make sure you stay tuned until tomorrow for our NFL Week 16 predictions. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.